Hello everyone, my name's Hannah. I'm here at Paradise Wildlife Park, so I'm part of the large carnival team here, and thank you for joining us. We are going to do a big cat feed here at Lion Pride Lands today. So we're going to start off seeing two of our females feeding in just a moment, and they'll just be ready to come out in a second, and we're going to be joined by Kia, who's our oldest female in our pride, and she's 13 years old, and we'll be joined by her youngest daughter Zuri, who's 7 years old. So they're going to be joining us, and they'll be eating together, and then in a few moments, once we've seen them eat for a little bit, we'll wander around and go and see Moto, our male, eating as well. This is part of their main meal. Here they come now. So this is Zuri just coming straight towards us at the moment. Kia is going for a wander to try and work out where we've put her food today. If we zoom in on Zuri for a second. So this is part of their main meal. Like I say, it can get a little bit gory, so I do apologise, but as I'm sure you can understand, they don't have the best table manners, unfortunately, with these guys. So they are strict carnivores. They only eat meat. And today they're actually eating horse meat. Now I should explain straight away, the horses aren't killed or farmed for us in any way. These are usually farm animals that have naturally passed away anyway. They've kind of come to the end of their lives and are unfortunately passing away. So like I say, they're not farmed or killed for us. They have lived healthy, happy lives, and then they come and join us just kind of at the last minute, really. It's a really good part of the diet for these guys. As you can imagine, they're obviously part of the equine family, very similar to zebra that lions would be eating in the wild. So it's a really, really good source of meat for these guys. So Kia's just found her food up there as well, so she's just starting to have a little snack up there at the moment too. So they are tucking in. They all get their own pieces of meat. So Zuri in particular down here at the moment, she loves to just inhale her food as quickly as possible. So we like to make sure that there's plenty for everyone else. So I should also mention the other female is eating over the other side at the moment in the other part of the enclosure just now. So she's been fed separately today. And it's just something that we're trying out at the minute while we're in the lockdown, because Zuri does eat her food so quickly. Sometimes she tries to steal everyone else's. So we're kind of rotating them at the moment. So sometimes Zuri will eat on her own for a little bit, sometimes Zuri, and sometimes Kia. So we do switch that round, and Moto is always fed separately, because being the male, he would get kind of first dibs on food in the wild, but we want to make sure that there is plenty for everyone and that he's not getting overweight or anything like that. So he does get fed separately, but as soon as everyone's finished, they all go back together, so they're not really kept apart for very long, and they don't seem to mind either way because they're getting their food, so they're quite happy at the moment anyway. So yeah, they are eating horse meat, like I say. They do get a bit of variety, but this is definitely their favourite. We try them on some chicken. The lions in particular aren't particularly fussed about that. Other cats really like chicken. These guys not really too worried. They get a little bit of a treat of maybe some fish every now and again, which sometimes cats just like the smell of and they like kind of rolling on and things like that. Sometimes they will eat a little bit as well, but we try them on a bit of everything. Now here, sometimes we will give them calf as well, so beef. Zuri really doesn't like that, whereas the other two girls absolutely love it, so that's kind of what we do. If Zuri needs a bit of a smaller meal, so we'll give her some horse meat and then give the other two girls some calf, and then we know that Zuri's not going to steal it from anyone, so that's quite handy for us to know as well. So it's all down to personal preference. Obviously in the wild it's much more of a take whatever you can get kind of problem, but here they have the luxury of being fussy, which they definitely take advantage of as much as possible. So we have to work out exactly what they like, which is always a fun part with working with these guys as well, working out what they like, what they don't like, and things like that. So when it comes to this kind of meal, this is they're all between 6 and 7 kilos each of our girls have got today. Moto has about 15 kilos when we pop round there in a minute, obviously being quite a bit bigger. So in terms of their weight range, our girls weigh between 160 and 170 kilos roughly. Moto's at about the 220 kilo mark, so like I say, quite a bit bigger. So he does have a much bigger meal than the others, and their size of meals does vary throughout the year as well. So in the summertime they have smaller meals because they don't do an awful lot. They will sleep for 18 to 22 hours a day, so they don't need a lot of energy. You end up with very lazy and very large cats if you give them the same size meals all through summer as well. Whereas in the winter it's a lot more active. They patrol a lot more, they play a lot more, so they need larger meals to help with that as well. So we do mimic their natural feeding patterns, because that would happen seasonally in the wild as well. If you imagine in the heat of the African sun, these guys aren't going to be hunting all the time, so they're going to kind of have one big meal, and then they might not eat for up to 2 weeks at some times, depending on food availability and if they've managed to have a really good kill at some point as well. So like I say, we like to mimic that as much as possible. So we try and promote lots of natural behaviours here with all of our animals. This feeding is part of it, but as well as that we like to give them lots of enrichment, because obviously for these guys they don't have to hunt and things like that, so we try and make sure that we're stimulating them in other ways. So we use things called enrichment, which basically, fancy way of saying toys, and that can be physical things such as large boomer balls, which are basically a cat-proof ball. It can be scents, so herbs, spices, perfumes, because these guys in the wild, if they were to come across another pride, they use scents an awful lot, and sense of smell particularly, to gain information basically. So I'm not entirely sure what information they'll gain from herbs and spices and perfumes, but they do absolutely love it. It really gets their kind of mind working. They do roll around in some of their favourites. So Zuri, for example, her favourite scent of all time and her dad's favourite is peppermint, so they go absolutely wild for it, which is really cool to see. But then for some of the others, they like things like paprika. Some of our cats like Chanel with very expensive tastes, so we always make sure that we mix it up, try them with a bit of everything whenever we can, really. So as well as that, we can use things like cardboard boxes. Typical cats, they love a cardboard box as well. But yeah, really anything. Sometimes we'll kind of build something really elaborate that might take us a while to kind of get everything together and actually make it for them. And other times it is something really, really simple that they just like to play with, really. So we do mix it up for them as much as we possibly can. So we'll wander around so that we can try and get a bit of a better view of Kia, as she's decided to lay with her back to us, and we'll leave Zuri to enjoy her meal at the moment. So we are just walking around Lion Pride Land, so if anyone hasn't visited us yet, we do have these little signs up so that you can tell everyone apart. It gives you a little bit of information about each of them as well. So this is one of our newer enclosures. These guys have lived in here for about a year now. And they have settled in very, very well, so we're really happy with how they've done. So we are just going to wander around here and go into one of our little keeper areas, so trespassers may be eaten, so don't come in here. But just in here now we will see a nice view of Kia up on Pride Rock, just there. So you can see at the moment Kia's really tucking in, and you can really see those muscles working as well. So although she hasn't had to run around to try and hunt or anything like that, even having large pieces of meat like this that aren't kind of prepared bits of meat, really does make them work. So she's using a lot of shoulder muscle at the minute to have a bit of a grip on that, and really kind of chewing away as well. So when it does come to telling these guys apart, Kia is the darkest female that we have. So our guys are white lions, so they are typically lighter than lions that you'd see in other wildlife parks and things like that. So she's kind of a little bit more golden in coloration. Also on top of her nose, she does have kind of a black mark just above her nose, so she suffers from a little bit of hay fever, so she gets a bit itchy sometimes. So yeah, it's turned the fur a little bit darker there. And then with Zuri, who I was looking at earlier, she's the lightest of all of our females, and her nose is pretty much completely golden, if you like. And then when it comes to Azula, she's kind of in the middle of the other two. She has a slightly grey nose. When you kind of see them all together or see photos of them all together, makes a little bit more sense. But you can kind of see on Kia's nose at the moment there, that is a little bit darker as well. So she is the mum to the other two girls here. Kia was actually born in South Africa. She came to us when she was just under 2 years old roughly, so, and like I say, she's 13 now, so been with us for a lovely long time, and done really well here. So as I mentioned, these guys are white lions. So they aren't breeding anymore. Zuri was our last white lion cub here. Like I say, she's 7 now, so we won't be having any more at all. So white lions, they're not a separate subspecies, separate species or anything like that. They're basically a blonde African lion, and that's down to a recessive gene in part of their genetic makeup, and that's known as leucism. So it's different from albinoism. So albinos have no pigment or coloration at all in their kind of fur particles and things like that. These guys do have some coloration, so like I say, it's leucism. Now I feel like calling them white lions is almost a bit cheating really, because they still are a little bit more golden than a white tiger, for example. So yeah, more like a blonde lion really. So they are no longer breeding because it's actually a very rare genetic thing to have, and you can actually end up kind of having medical problems associated with it as well. So we obviously don't want those to carry on if they were to start having medical issues. So for us here at the park, we are no longer breeding them at all. They are purely here just as ambassadors for their species. So we're just popping over and seeing Moto as well, who's enjoying his food just in the on-show den. So they are incredible ambassadors. They've helped us raise thousands and thousands of pounds, which go out to directly help white lions in the wild. So we support a huge range of charities here as part of our work. So not all of our animals are kind of having to breed to be part of breeding programs and things like that. There's lots of different roles and jobs that the animals here at Paradise Wildlife Park have. And for these guys, like I say, they are ambassadors. So they raise money and awareness really of everything that's going on for wild lions. And one of my favourite projects that we support here is a lion collaring project. And that basically helps keep track of wild lion pride, so that we know exactly where they're going and what they're up to, how long they're spending in certain places, which is really handy from a research perspective, and understanding even better their wild behaviours and things like that, and if there's any changes going on. But as well as that, the collars that are put on the wild lions, and you only have to put on a collar onto one member of the pride to help keep track of them. And then also those collars can actually be used to transmit GPS, which can be sent to a ranger's phone, for example, in the middle of the African bush, and you pretty much get a text message to say that they're getting too close to a local village, for example. Now a huge problem for these guys is retaliation killings from livestock farmers. So these guys obviously see a nice field full of sheep or cattle, and it makes a nice easy meal for them, much easier than chasing a zebra herd across the plains of Africa. So these guys will sometimes take livestock. Now for a farmer that can be a huge problem in terms of their money and the income that they have to support their family. So sometimes unfortunately they will then retaliate. So by using these collars, it sends the message out to the rangers saying they're getting a bit close to a village. The rangers can get in their trucks, speed over there as quickly as possible, and basically help drive the lions back away into the bush and keep them away from people as much as possible. So it's really reduced the number of retaliation killings that they've had to be, which is incredibly handy for these guys. But like I say, also from a research perspective, understanding the group dynamics, at what ages they might kind of disperse from a pride, how far they're ranging, how long they're spending resting, all of those kind of things allow us to create an accurate picture of these guys. So it is really handy, like I say. So this is Moto, our male. He is 13 years old as well now, so he's a lovely boy, and he's been with us for a good few years now. So he is dad to Zuri, who we saw feeding first of all today, and he is absolutely lovely with her. He was an amazing dad, and he's very soppy when it comes to all of that kind of thing. So she gets away with absolutely everything. She's a real daddy's girl, and he doesn't mind in the slightest. So yeah, they're a really lovely pair. But we will be leaving these guys to finish eating their food in a bit of peace while there's no one around, so we'll leave them to it for a little while. But thank you very much for joining us this morning. I hope you've enjoyed seeing these guys have a little bit of a breakfast. Oh, he's gone to his other bit now instead, so we'll pop over here. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us. If you do have time, please have a look through our Facebook, see all of our other wonderful lives that we've been doing through the coronavirus lockdown. So obviously with no public on site at the minute, all of our funds have really been affected. So if you can help out with any donations to our Facebook fundraiser, that'd be great. But even sharing our videos and getting the message out there would be ideal. But also when we are open, come and visit us. Come see what we've been up to, and come and meet all these lovely animals that you've been seeing on Facebook Live as well. So thank you very, very much for joining us, and we will see you soon, hopefully.